feeling. He just knew how other people across the board, and it didn't matter. He just knew how other people were feeling.
But how many people knew what he was feeling?
He kept that much more guarded.
Clough no longer liked the sound of his own voice quite as much.
You used to enjoy being in the limelight.
I thought it got out of hand a little bit.
He was more reclusive.
I decided, you know, to concentrate on running the club.
Achievement brought less pleasure and more pressure.
He'd be sitting, you know, and you could see his mind ticking round. He used to say that the most important job a manager does is picking the team. You know, every Friday it was, you know, quite tense.
You know, when you're in your late 30s or whatever, you know, I think he felt he could take on the world. And, you know, as time gets on, that diminishes slightly. But nobody ever got a hint of that, the vulnerability of it all.
We don't hide anything here. We reduce things perhaps to a little bit of simplicity where other managers might, you know, find them complex.
I think he felt the responsibility of everybody else, really, more than, well, he did. He felt that responsibility, looking after everybody else more than himself.
I can understand that, the pressure mounting on him, because once you achieve something, expectations levels from everyone else is higher, and they expect you to deliver.
Now Battles! Going all the way, Battles!
You wanted to please him. You wanted to go out and do your utmost to please him so that he would have that respect for you that you were craving. This need to know that you meant something in his life.
If it means abiding by a few little rules, and if we have discipline running right through the club so they can come back at half-time and win cup finals, then they want me every day of the week.
But what Brian Clough wanted most of all was the supreme job.
He spoke what he thought was right. If you do anything wrong against that mobbing now, it don't last 5 minutes.
I think the establishment in any field are frightened of outspoken people. They don't just look at your CV, how good you are, and what you might achieve, how you might handle the players. They look at how they might handle you.
December 1977. England manager Don Revie had defected to coach the United Arab Emirates. The national game needed a saviour.
Oh, if he could have managed England, it would have been his absolute dream job.
But now we come to Brian Clough, and I know it's delighted the whole Big Match team to see just how the mail has flowed in about him in this last week, and a swing to about 95% in favour of the fella.
Brian Clough was the public's choice.
My man for the job has always been Brian Clough.
I think Clough and Taylor have all the qualities needed at this moment.
The choice of a huge percentage of people within football.
Unanimously.
It was Brian Clough first, second and third. There was no contest. It wasn't a campaign, it was a rubber stamp. They were saying this is going to happen.
I was called up for an interview, and the other two there were Bobby Robson and Brian Clough. Brian thought, well, where's the time the rest of us coming, because he was the right man for it.
It's never been heard of someone walking out of the England managerial position. It was an unbelievable opportunity, you know, for the FA to appoint the best manager in the country, and that was Brian Clough.
It's a bit cold, isn't it?
He had a certain amount of hope that it would sort of go well.
I've always liked the England job, or even, you know, I'm delighted to have even been associated with it, because I didn't get to this stage last time.
We sat there in the entranceway at Lancaster Gate, and I remember an elderly gentleman coming in and started to go up the stairs, and he waited a bit, puffing and panting a wee bit, and Cloughie said, hey, do you think you can manage those stairs? You might as well get the lift. I don't think you'll make it to the top. And I thought, oh, that's a good start, because he was on the panel that was going to interview us. And so that was one vote down before he got in the door.
He thought, and he's always thought, all his life, that he gave a good interview.
He would think, I'm not bothered if you like me, just respect me.
Management's essential in any football club, however big or however small.
and I feel the Football Association should have the best manager. And please don't ask me who that is.
All I know is that he gave his best. He thought he'd gone well, met what he thought was reasonable men, and he was delighted.
However, according to the man who headed up the FA's press office, the interview process was flawed.
Just turn around on the steps to go.
Ron Greenwood actually wasn't on the candidate list.
Why?
Well, presumably because he'd already been lined up.
So before Brian Clough and the others walked through that door to be interviewed, Ron Greenwood has already got the job.
That's the conclusion that I draw from it.
No actual mention of Brian Clough, but the chairman reported that he hoped that the decision of the electoral committee would be announced on Monday, the 12th of December.
Who didn't want it to happen?
Sir Harold Thompson. Everybody was scared stiff of him. And very few people had the intellect or the strength of character to withstand him.
Everyone said, oh, they'll be frightened of him. And of course they were.
Could you explain your reaction when you were telephoned with the news?
I heard it on the wireless, actually, just before we went into lunch. So it was a nice occasion, yes.
There wasn't a vote. The decision was made beforehand. The chairman would have said, I want to appoint Ron Greenwood, and they would have agreed.
Was that the way that Sir Harold Thompson behaved?
Yes.
The electoral committee wasn't a standing committee, and therefore its minutes are not recorded.
So what is said in that meeting remains in that meeting?
Absolutely. That's the way things were done.
Who would have been your choice, Laurie?
Cloughie. Yeah, Brian at that time.
Brian Clough. Totally agree on that, yeah.
If he'd have been around in this day and age, they would have been knocking his door down to get him to manage England.
The diplomatic bit, I think they were a bit worried about that. What he would maybe tell the Germans about the war.
And if you look at a number of the England footballers in recent times, they don't perform for the England national side as they do for their club sides. And the public knew that with Brian Clough, there is no way any player would play for England if he didn't reproduce his club form. Because he'd say, young man, you're not playing very well, you're out.
He was dreadfully disappointed, but not too surprised, I don't think.
The second that you lose sight of the top job, it's called ambition, actually. You might as well pack in, wrap it up and just go home and fade away.
The greatest English manager that England never had.
European champions. The closest I got to that, I think, was in a comic.
I think he'd be in tears, probably, if he saw that.
Excuse me, lads, thank you.
Right, yeah.
I don't know if somebody's messing about up there.
Where?